The story is authentic and it happened to me, and it is repeating itself now. It happens once a year, it happens less often. The village of Ostry-Kamyshinsky district of the Novgorod region. This village is located in beautiful places, for an amateur. Lakes and big swamps all around. The Valdai lowland after all. My grandparents lived there, and every summer they gave me to them for supervision and for fresh milk. When I became the eldest, I started going there every summer and now I go. Places for fishing there are fertile. There was a curious character there at one time, Kolya the Fool. Previously, not violent people were in no hurry to hand over to the madhouse, they looked after their relatives as much as possible. So Kolya often sat on a bench in the front garden of his native house, and occasionally wandered the streets without any purpose. He was incredibly colorful. Absolutely gray-haired, disheveled playfulness, gray eyebrows, and even these gray, worn-out Kurza boots and something similar to a jacket seemed to grow. The earliest memories of him belong to childhood. I was 10 or 12 years old. What about his age and childhood is it like? Those who are a year older than you are already older, and those who are 10 or 15 years older than you are already elderly. He seemed elderly to me, but from the height of my present years, I understand that he was 35 years old at that time, or maybe a little more. I looked into his eyes only once and I still regret it. If it's a mirror of the soul, then it doesn't seem to have been there. It's probably like looking into the eyes of a dead man. I wanted to turn away quickly. My acquaintance with him happened under the following circumstances. Children are pretty cruel creatures and the entertainment of village children was the mockery of Kolya. My favorite activity is to run around, call a fool and ask to show a horse. We who come for the summer were invited to this show as spectators to demonstrate the local attraction. I went once and couldn't do it anymore because of the acute feeling of disgusted pity, and that look of his. Moreover, I saw the horse in his performance after a month and a half and then completely by accident. There was no connection between the children's request that he show the horse and the execution. Apparently it was a kind of seizure and it could happen anywhere and anytime. On that ill-fated day, I was just passing by his house. From the outside, this action really resembled a horse. This is when adults put the kids on their shoulders, holding them by the legs and slightly bouncing, making high neighing sounds. Only now the sounds that Kolya made could cause hysteria to impressionable natures. Human vocal cords are simply not capable of this. In any case, I felt the skin tighten on the back of my head and along my spine, goosebumps the size of a fist. Then I entered his house by the third way. By the way, I recently watched on TV a ritual performed by an exorcist priest filmed by an amateur camera, not a production. The hysterical woman was making something similar. Neighing, growling, screeching like a whistle, hysterical laughter and some gibberish similar to an unknown language. Well, now what happened and is happening. The first time it happened was when I was 17 years old. Having caught the fish at the evening dawn, I returned home. Evening. There is no TV in the house, chewing gum for brains on the radio and in the city got tired, and therefore sat down to read a book. Silence in the village if you've been there. The nearest town of Borovichi is 55 kilometers away, and a more or less large village is 15. Somewhere after 1 o'clock in the morning I hear someone calling me from the street softly and lingeringly by name and sort of right under the window. I looked out, there was no one in the light from the windows, and most importantly, I don't understand who by the voice. It's not even clear if it's a man or a woman. Naturally, I asked who needed it in the middle of the night. In response, silence, and they start calling again. But I think there are two options: either one of the friends of the girlfriends is kidding, or the local peasants came to shoot at the bottle. The first option has disappeared. Friends, girlfriends have already managed to leave for cities and villages since the end of summer. Option 2 is also not particularly suitable. The arrows are raked either by 9 in the evening for tomorrow morning, or by 9 in the morning, that is, the opening time of the store. But you never know, I didn't want to give money. The paradox is somehow quickly forgotten here. So I didn't come out even though they called for a long time, only as soon as the beginning stopped flying. In the morning I told my grandmother that they came to shoot at the bottle, but so persistently and drunkenly, and it looks like trash, because they could not say anything except the name. They didn't let me sleep until morning. After asking for details, my grandmother turned white and rushed behind the stove, took out an icon, put it on the table, and let's be baptized. To say that I was stunned is to say nothing. The first time I saw her being baptized, and I didn't know about the fact that there was an icon in the house. Before that, I had gone away in every possible way from questions of faith. The communists in these places famously produced their time. In the chapel church, the icons were taken away and the icons were only cracked. And here it is. Naturally, I had a lot of questions, but Grandma kept silent for a long time, only asked me not to leave in any case if I was called from the street at night. When asked why I hadn't warned before, I replied that it had been a long time, I didn't think it would start again. The last case was revered 20 years ago, and before that it was often in the old days. Information. The cat cried a little shorter. I got her with questions, but she told me. The story began with the question, do you remember Kolya the fool? Damn, you'll forget that. It turns out that he was not always a fool. Before the events described by her, he was a normal guy. But when he was 20 years old, one night he said that he would go out on the street, like his name is. The relatives themselves did not hear anything, even though they were in the same hut with him. They did not dissuade, as they say, the case is young. He went out and disappeared. Friends and acquaintances were raised the next day, but no one knows where he is or what is with him. Only on the fourth day the police got involved, but there were no traces. 2 weeks later, a team of collective farmers once again went to the farm, allocated a place for logging to the collective farm, and the farm itself was about 6 kilometers from the village together under the name of Dalnaya Grooming. We arrived, and their Kolya jumps up to the felled bitches, demonstrating this very horse. Rags remained from the clothes. Scratched all over, there is no living place, skinny as a skeleton, no shoes, feet in blood and already white to the eyebrows. That's how Kolya the fool appeared in our village, says Grandma. Of course, I continued the interrogation, saying what happened to him. I got a strange answer to my question. It's a good thing that these guys wrote it. Who are these? What does it mean that they rode around and did not get an answer? Then I ask what happened. And what's next? They brought him, gave him to his family, as he himself saw, harmless in general. One bad thing is that at night everyone tries to leave the house, but the door will be locked, he will calm down and sleep peacefully. Curiosity is not a vice any more than piggishness, as they say. I began to ask how I could see him. Maybe I'll find out because of the trousers once and the mumbling that he uttered when he was not in a fit. How will you see him? Grandma says. He's been missing for 3 years. Relatives did not follow the door, and he left into the night. Our men and the neighboring villages and the police searched for a long time. Only there are no traces. So they closed the case. This seems to be his fate. After that incident, he was marked all the same. They would have gotten to him anyway.